he gave public endorsement of Westinghouse in the leaders' debate. Westinghouse is a nuclear energy company which Brookfield is invested in. He has announced he's going to spend billions of dollars on modular homes. Brookfield is invested in modular homes.
I feel secondhand embarrassment for these people. I just don't understand. I can't rationalize how you can be that brain dead. I don't know how else to put it. I'm Jasmine Lane. Follow, like, subscribe, share, comment your thoughts down below because this is a very juicy one. Mark Carney may be elbows deep in conflicts of interest. And sure, you've heard about Brookfield, but there's another one that they really don't want you putting the puzzle pieces together on, and it is a lot darker than modular homes. It feels like a straight-up betrayal amidst the liberal-created housing crisis. Pierre Poilievre stepped in, though, during a live press conference and absolutely ripped Mark Carney apart on the record, exposing the mess that we're in, the manipulation, the elites cashing in, while you're having a hard time paying your bills right now. All that and more coming up today on Over Opinionated.
Have been tapped to keep a close eye on the Prime Minister as part of an ethics screen, preventing any conflicts of interest with the PM's former employer. Prime Minister Carney's chief of staff and the country's top public servant will be taking on the roles. The ethics screen comes as part of a recent disclosure by the Office of the Ethics Commissioner, which confirmed that the PM had divested investments through a blind trust. The screen aims to prevent conflicts of interest with Carney's former employer, Brookfield.
Mark Carney's ethics screen, which is also managed by one of the people who is also invested in a number of the exact same things as he is. Wild that that is even allowed to happen. It's about as effective as, I don't know, a screen door on a submarine, maybe. Yeah, sure, there's over 100 that are sealed off, but his policies still align perfectly with Brookfield's portfolio, among many other things. And at the end of the day, he may not be able to touch Brookfield, but everybody in his party is well aware. Everybody knows, and he knows where the money flows. He knows what the influence will be in all of those decisions, which is why he should have done the honorable thing and just sold them all off, right? And then you wouldn't have had this problem. And that certainly allows for skepticism that I would argue is quite valid and probable to flow about what the hell his true intentions are.
The Prime Minister's office, in combination with the Clerk of the Privy Council, would identify issues in advance. So we'd say, oh, this piece of legislation that's going to be introduced to the House of Commons on Monday, Prime Minister, you can have nothing to do with it. Not only can you not speak on the bill, you cannot participate in conversations around the cabinet table or in caucus about this bill because it could affect your own holdings, your own business interests, and you can't be seen to be advocating or steering something that would reward you financially.
So in other words, Mark Carney, in essence, is going to be a useless prime minister. I mean, conservatives have been saying that for a number of reasons, but yeah, so he's not going to be allowed to have anything to do with his entire election platform, everything that he's promised, everything he campaigned on. Wow. Wow, elbows up, Canada. We really did get just this amazing global economist who's going to help us so much, but he can't because he's so deeply conflicted and benefits from that help. And again, you know, at the end of the day, you can blindfold him all you want, but you can't erase his memory or his stock options. He refuses to do that, actually.
So it puts a lot of pressure on the clerk and the office to identify these issues, to make certain that they are steered around the Prime Minister, that there are protocols in place to ensure that everything is caught. And for the opposition, it becomes a treasure chest of potential future political allegations. You can say, aha, look at the way that this legislation will affect Brookfield, his old company, and how he's now obviously enriching himself. So you'll see from this list of assets that he's declared, 1 million accusations in the political future.
Look at that. Already setting the narrative, already setting the don't believe conservatives. They're just using this as a weapon. At the end of the day, yeah, it sure is a gold mine, but that's only because Mark Carney buried it himself. You don't get to spend years profiting off of government contracts, lobbying, getting big banks involved in your ideological BS and your policies that line up with Brookfield's investments, and then act shocked when people start connecting the dots. That's not conspiracy at all. By the way, it's convenient.
But shouldn't we be flying less now?
We should be taking into account the impact of our flying on the planet now. And that's
pushing up the tax on flying.
You push up the tax on flying, you push up the cost on transport, and that's in part what putting a price on carbon in.
And it's not a million accusations. It's one giant conflict of interest that's broken into 1,000 pieces, like housing, energy, infrastructure. Every single time Mark Carney opens his mouth about the economy and net zero, green, clean, fighting machine that he wants Canada to become because it benefits him financially, because there's actually no other reason. If you look at the data, it hasn't improved emissions at all.
He says that jet fuel, he in the past he has said that he helped influence regulatory changes forcing aviation companies to buy certain kinds of jet fuel that one of his companies was invested in, so that air passengers have to pay more for their airline ticket to subsidize this specialty jet fuel that profits a company in which Mr. Carney had a financial interest. And the list of potential conflicts goes on and on. How can he possibly be involved in developing a budget when all the tax policies could impact on his investments directly or indirectly? How could he address things like competition policy when his companies might be impacted? Then there's, for example, the digital services tax. The digital services tax is paid by some of the companies that he is invested in, and therefore he has a potential or perceived conflict of interest in that as well.
Okay. Well, first thing, the oil and gas sector in Canada produces more than a quarter of our emissions. Yeah. So and that's in the production and transportation of oil and gas, not the actual use of oil and gas in our cars, used to heat some homes and other things.
Canada emits approximately 1.5% of all global emissions. And by the way, carbon created by humans is approximately 0.04% of the atmosphere. Just going to throw that out there.
So we can't meet our ultimate objectives, which is to get to net zero emissions, which, by the way, is what we have to do to prevent the wildfires and the other climatic events from getting worse, what the world has to do. We can't get there unless...
Did you know, by the way, that these world events aren't actually getting worse if you go and look through historical data? No, they're not getting worse. Actually, they've gotten better in many cases. One of the reasons why it affects so many people, though, is just due to the population, due to people living in areas that are affected and, hoping it's never going to happen to them, and then it does. Oh, and also forest management. Yeah, that's another big one, too. Government. The government refusing to do something because they don't want to spend money on it so that they can then spend money on their ideological goals by, carbon tax baby daddy Carney.
We do not just have a cap on emissions, but those emissions are brought effectively to zero. Now, so that's the climate physics. You don't need to be a meteorologist. You don't need to be a climate scientist. It's the simple math of it.
His entire career path is a conflict of interest. And then being prime minister is a conflict of interest because he went from regulating markets and investing them to now controlling the policies on them. This isn't, some minor ethical gray zone. This is a revolving door that has never stopped spinning, and you guys just gave him the crown. And since they were just talking about Danielle Smith, figured it was a good opportunity to throw this one in because Alberta just banned sexually explicit books from school libraries under new education standards. And depending on who you ask, it's either a common sense move to protect kids, which I always thought liberals were fond of, or it's a dangerous step into political censorship. Alrighty. Left-leaning media calls it a culture war, suggesting that the policy targets LGBTQ plus content. Right-leaning sources frame it as safeguarding children from sexualization. And the center, it's mostly procedural. And this is exactly why I use Ground News. It breaks down the bias in all coverage so that I can see what is actually happening, not just how somebody wants me to feel about it. As you can see here, the left is emphasizing censorship, funding issues and political motivation, the right is highlighting protection, parental rights, and fake news pushback. And both sides are talking about kids, but they completely disagree on who it is that's being protected here. Ground News even shows you what your side might be missing entirely with their blind spot feature. I use this one almost every single day because sometimes it's not about what's being reported. It's actually just about what's being conveniently ignored. In a world where debates like this are shaping future generations, entire societies, you need more than outrage. You need the facts and you need clarity. Go to ground.news/Jasmine or scan this QR code on screen to get 40% off their Vantage plan. That's ground.news/Jasmine, and the link is also going to be in the description of this video. If you care about kids, culture, or honestly just the truth about anything in the headlines, you can start with Ground News.
I own nothing but cash and personal real estate, and that's not going to change in public life. Well, it turns out while he said that, he knowingly owned 574 stocks and deferred profits and stock options in Brookfield and other companies. So it was patently and now provably false for him to say he owned nothing but cash and real estate. 2, my assets are now in a blind trust, so I don't know what exactly is in there. That too is false. He must have known what was in that blind trust because he was the one that filled out the paperwork for the ethics commissioner to report those holdings. So he knew exactly what was in his blind trust, and he just did not want Canadians to know before they went to the polls. Finally, he said, and I quote, I do not have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management. Well, it turns out that he has continuing stock options and deferred share units in Brookfield Asset Management. And these options cannot be sold, or at least not easily, and we have no reason to believe they have been. So when he said that he had no connection to Brookfield, he was stating a patent falsehood. Now, why should we care? Why should Canadians care about this? Well, Mr. Carney has shown in the past his willingness to use his political connections in order to profit himself. For example, he said, let's see here, he gave public endorsement of Westinghouse in the leaders' debate. Westinghouse is a nuclear energy company which Brookfield is invested in. He has announced he's going to spend billions of dollars on modular homes. Brookfield is invested in modular homes. He says he wants to subsidize heat pumps. Brookfield is invested in heat pumps.
And I really need you to do me a favor here, okay? We're going to band together, you and I. We are not going to let anyone try to brush this off as a conspiracy theory. Oh, you're just you're grasping at straws. No, because the facts are there and the truth rings just a little bit differently. Mark Carney already spent how many months trying to deflect away from this reality? Why would he do that unless there was something to hide, something of concern, something he didn't want in public eye? So here's the facts, okay? Mark Carney worked for Brookfield Asset Management, which is, by the way, one of the largest asset managers in the world until 2023, that grew exponentially according to Brookfield Asset Management's own press releases under Mark Carney. How did it grow so much? Due to very successful lobbying, very successful political connections, all of the things that Pierre Poilievre just laid out for us. Oh, and by the way, he served as vice chair, which was deeply involved in climate, real estate, and infrastructure portfolios, which is essentially everything his election promises were. Why he even ran? Obviously, because he knew he was going to win, but it's insane, right? And here's another one that's just really going to rock your world. Did you know, and I didn't learn this, by the way, I have to give mad credit to somebody on X who actually commented on a video of mine and showed me this. And I was like, this came from Tim on X. He says, and just in case you're wondering who owns the largest real estate company in the country, it's your prime minister. I'm shocked I hadn't heard of that before. So obviously I did all kinds of digging, and yep, it absolutely is true. Brookfield Asset Management owns Royal LePage. For clarity's sake, Royal LePage is owned by Bridgermark Real Estate Services, which is majority owned and controlled by Brookfield Asset Management, by the way. And Royal LePage is one of the largest real estate brokerages in Canada with over 20,000 agents and a massive market share in resale homes, luxury real estate, suburban development, all of that stuff. I'm sure you know this because you live here and you see the news and you see signs on people's front yards. And then you have Brookfield, which is involved in that, right? So I want you to consider this. The fact that Mark Carney, throughout the campaign, and honestly, even in yesterday's episode, which you should watch if you haven't already, his team, his ministers, have been saying that we're going to build 1 million homes. We're going to build, baby, build. Yeah, Canadians elected us to build. No, we don't, because we don't want a socialist and communist government. We actually just really wanted a prime minister who was going to make our country better and more profitable and investable, not for you guys to actually just completely push out the private sector so that you could build our homes for us anyway, though. But he's very much pushing for centralized coordination of housing across every province, across all municipalities, right? That's what his whole play is. And people are cheering it on as though it's a great thing. Royal LePage would profit directly from the increased home transactions. And even if, okay, we're building up some new stuff, right? Yeah. Well, those homes at some point in time are going to sell, and Royal LePage is going to make a lot of money. So the more homes built and sold, the more money Royal LePage, i.e. Brookfield, make. And Carney is now in the driver's seat of a national housing crisis of which his government, while he was advising Justin Trudeau, helped to create.
You know, the one topic that nobody ever talks, everyone's like all about race hatred and you should hate this group for that reason and it's the fault of this group, white people, black people, Jewish people, whatever. The one thing that nobody ever debates in public is how the economy's structured.
Exactly right.
And why do hardworking people who actually add something to the country, who actually do meaningful work, creative work that's essential, string the power lines, teach the children, defend the borders, why are they getting paid the least? And people like Bill Ackman talking about Herbalife on CNBC's got $9 billion. Like, what is that? And you can't tell me if I oppose it that I'm a socialist, because I'm not. I was right-wing before you were born, son. Shut up. I'm not a socialist. But by the way, socialism is what we're going to get.
Well, that's the point.
If we don't address it.
You get Mom Donnie.
Our economy is so distorted, so rigged against hardworking, honest people, American-born people, that they will, in the end, move to another system out of frustration. And that's exactly what happened in Venezuela.
I totally agree.
I know. I've been saying this since I wrote that book, whenever that was.
I know there's a number of people who are not the biggest fans of Tucker Carlson at the moment because of some things that he has said and done. And regardless of how you feel about that, I know I have my own feelings about it. I really do believe that what he shared there is so true and so real that it deserves to be spread. In terms of Canada, though, I will fully say it, and I'm not afraid. Mark Carney is a fraud. He is a liar. He is evil by definition, in as far as I can tell, because nobody stands to benefit from what it is that he wants to do with us except for him and his elite friends. And that, to me, is the definition of evil. And every single person in the media who failed to do their job, who knowingly, like, people in media know things. They're not all idiots. There's a lot of people in there who say things that they don't agree with, that they don't believe in, but they have to say it, otherwise they're going to lose their job. And you can call them whatever names you want for that, but that's just the reality at the end of the day. And we're all kind of facing a lot of difficulties right now when it comes to money and jobs. So, you know, I do offer some compassion to a lot of them on that front, the ones that I know at least. But every single person who stood in front of a camera and vilified the Conservatives so that Mark Carney would win, so that they would continue to get their federal money, is a part of that evil machine at work. They are a part of the damage that has been done, and they will have to pay the piper one day, without a doubt. And it's no surprise to me that all of this information about Mark Carney, what do they do with it? Well, they defend, deflect, protect, and change the narrative so brilliantly as they do. And they have shit like this that they're airing right now instead of, I don't know, being a journalist, reporting the news perhaps. Nah, it's crazy. Crazy, I know.
It's odd. We're in this rocky relationship as a nation with the United States, our friends, our neighbors, and our family members who live in the U.S. and colleagues It's become so difficult in terms of handling the conversations we're having delicately. So talk to us about that and how you're planning on exploring that issue next hour.
Yeah, so, some time ago, before this trade war, we did a version of the topic that we're doing in the second hour, asking people about their relationships with people in the United States. And we learned a couple of things. First of all, a lot of Canadians have family and dear friends in the United States. I mean, more than acquaintances, really close friends, people that they would go and vacation with, and so there are a lot of Canadians with ties to Americans. And the second thing we discovered is how difficult it was for many of them to deal with Americans because of Trump and the MAGA movement. Especially they walk into a house where Fox News is on, and for a lot of Canadians, they kind of see that, not all, but a lot, and it seems like an alternate version of reality. And so now we have the trade war. Now we have elbows up. Now we have the Canadians who are still steadfastly trying their best to not buy American. And so what's that like? And it's summertime, right? So this is the time when a lot of people would have been visiting the United States, or maybe in some cases still are. So we're looking forward to hearing from people on what those relationships are like, how they're navigating them.
The conservatives, they're so very divisive. Oh, they're just so negative. Take a look in the mirror already. I am just so tired of that. And I want to leave you with this. And I really mean this when I say it. And I do think that you need to hold yourself accountable and responsible for the way that you behave, both in person and online. I understand tensions are high. I understand people are frustrated. They're feeling hopeless. They just feel like you're screaming for help and everybody's telling you to shut up instead of listening to you. And I know what that feels like in so many ways. But overall, don't you dare for 1 second, if you have done your research and and you have looked at all sources that are available to you, and you look at the different biases, and you're able to use all that information and find your own opinion in it, and it leads you in the same direction that so many of us are in, don't you dare allow anybody to drag your name through the mud, to call you names, and to try to shut you up and silence you, because what we are dealing with here is real. It matters. It's important. And the only people who are seeking to discredit you are the people who don't want the truth to get out. But the truth is very powerful. And in the battle of good and evil, evil looks like it's winning because it does all sorts of nefarious, unthinkable things in order to get the upper hand. But good always wins. And so with that, again, handle yourself well. I'm not somebody where I encourage, like thumb wars on the internet. I'm not somebody who's a fan of like vitriolically attacking people, doxing them, name calling them, whatever it is. I'm not a fan of that, especially when it gets to extremes, as it so often does on social media, where people just seem to think that accountability doesn't exist anymore. And so you should always carry yourself in a way that is respectful to your family, to your parents, to your future, to your legacy. And you can do that in a way that isn't using stupid ad hominem attacks on people or making ghost accounts to troll people on the internet. Like, you reap what you sow. And if you want to be taken seriously, you have to start acting serious. So when it comes to this sort of stuff, because I just cannot wait for the media fallout of it, please know that I am with you, and you need to hang in there, remain strong, remain vigilant, and let the truth be heard. And don't you dare let anybody try to put a boot on your throat about this stuff, because there's a reason why they want that boot to be there. And I kindly reject that reason, because enough is enough already. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see if this video gets demonetized. Awesome. I will talk to you tomorrow. Be sure to subscribe, follow, like, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video far and wide, because it really does help get the message out there.